Fantastic. Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the TFTuesday Podcast. My name is Zil, and I'm also joined by my co-host K-Libra. How you doing, K-Libra?
Doing okay. Did you see that little clip that came out from about the Super Mario Brothers movie?
I did.
Do you know how happy that made me?
I can only imagine the little map showing the little truck going across New York. I thought
From
was
from
very
Brooklyn to
cute.
Queens,
Yeah.
but they used a song.
Yes, they did use the song, which I did. I did appreciate.
I was Now I want to see the movie for real.
Yeah, that actually might have I mean, okay, let me be honest. I wanted to see the movie because of Bowser already,
I
but
wanted
that
to
also
I wanted to see it, but now I'm like, all right, you have me now.
well,
Any,
we'll see if it continues to be that promising.
yeah.
So we have a very exciting guest with us today, Antifreeze. But before we get to him, just a quick note. Again, as always, if you would like to support us, you can always check us out on Patreon. If you want to help keep the show going and such, it's patreon.com/TFTuesdayPod. Or if you have any questions, you don't even need to be on the Patreon. You can always tweet questions at us with hashtag TFTuesdayPod or comment on YouTube. And if you are watching on YouTube, please leave us a like or subscribe and ding the bell and all those wonderful things. All right, that's out of the way. So Antifreeze is here with us today, and we're really excited to be chatting with him about a variety of different topics. So would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Antifreeze, mostly known on Twitter for transformation writing and role playing, and I'm also known as Microphone Underground on for Affinity, and that was just something I just made up at the current time when I wanted to know, like, just make a login. So I just go by Antifreeze now, or Annie, or whatever you want to call me. It doesn't really matter. That's just my handle.
I gotta say, I remember when the name Microphone Underground, because you were somebody who was commenting on my stuff like in the early years of posting.
Exactly. I don't know why I created it though. I probably was drunk and I was like, okay, I gotta see these like adult stuff, so I gotta make a login. So fuck it, make whatever.
It fucking worked though.
It does.
I'm like, oh, it's Microphone Underground commenting again. I appreciate it. But yeah, so you roleplay and you write. So like, I don't know, did one spur the other for you, or or did you just kind of jump in? Like, okay, you know what the most interesting thing is, like breaking into role playing, because it's something I never pictured doing, but then one day it's kind of like, hey, you wanna? Yeah. So I don't know, like, what your experience with that was actually like doing that.
I think it segues into a lot of people want in transformation, and usually what happened is that I started off with role playing where I was trying to want a certain thing, but no one really could give me what I needed in that sense. And so what happened is I started to develop, details of how a transformation happened. And it was like, wait a minute, if I'm being so detailed in these transformations, why not just create my own stories? And so, I kind of started off, bad grammar, all that stuff, but it was kind of helping me develop a skill set to develop my own writing. So role playing first, and then I started writing to kind of create stories that I know that would resonate with people, because kind of that role playing aspect is understanding what a person wants and needs out of a transformation.
Mhm.
Okay.
Did you get a lot of do you RP at the beginning, for lack of a better term?
See, that's the thing too. There's proper ways of going about it. Like, I
Mhm.
know the common ways of like sending notes to people on FA. That's very, I can't think of the word of it. It's not rude. It's just kind of weird and awkward because it's not the proper place to ask those type of questions. There's other sites
Yeah.
out there. So,
Mhm.
but kind of, when I first started in the fandom, which was around 2002 or 2003, there really wasn't any sites. There was just mostly chat rooms and all that stuff. So, but it was just
Right.
kind of like, you kind of know where certain sites that where you could probably find partners for that, and where you shouldn't be really asking for that, because that's not the proper channels in a sense.
What would you say like were the right sites back then versus maybe what the right sites are now?
Oh, the biggest one, obviously, and you're going way, way back, was Choose Your Own Change, when that was the really heavy site. Because, I mean, everyone, talks about now, like, who cares about it? And if you're really coming in the family, you don't really know about it. But really back in the day, there was TF web rings. Those were for, like, the artworks, but, like, and transfer as well. But, like, Choose Your Own Change is really the kind of the site, because there was, like, forums, there was chat rooms, and it was a centralized transformation site that wasn't just furry. It could be, for muscle, it could be for waking, it could be anything. So it was a kind of a channel where you can find people to kind of do that stuff with. But now as the fandom's kind of evolved and the internet's kind of expanded, there's more proper channels for that.
Yeah.
I would think that it also has to do with a lot of things were created out of need.
Exactly.
When I'm sure the right people have noticed, people echoing, man, just it'd be nice to just be able to do this more often or something, because that's how a lot of the stuff is born. Just a lot of community driven stuff is made by the community. I don't think there's going to be like any Twitter red coming out for your RP tweets, that shit ain't happening. So it's like done by and for the way I see it. And if I'm wrong, I'd be fucking shocked. Like whose deep pockets are funding, whatever site, but that usually isn't the case. So I think, but that is good to think about, because I have just been accustomed to having a presence, people noticing, and then asking me for things, whether it's RP, art, or both, So I just kind of didn't really think about where are the spaces that are most appropriate for this. It's been like a fucking organic thing. And, and I'm just like, well, I guess that's how fucking people are, and I'm not really looking for it.
Yeah. Well, even like, just building off of like how it used to be in the past, I know that like particularly myself, when I started getting into role playing and such, and this was kind of before I was even like putting out art content or was known for that. CYOC definitely was one of them. Also, and again, dating myself here, Yahoo Messenger. That shit got a lot of use back in the day. And I mean, obviously that does not exist anymore, but it was really useful to have that kind of like a chatting service, because it felt very comfortable to then like jump into a role playing situation. And I guess like Telegram is the substitute now for that. I mean, I guess I don't use that for anymore, but I'm sure there are people who do use it for that. But it's interesting to see how it's kind of evolved over the years. So I guess, reflecting back on what you use most frequently now, do you default to like a Telegram, or are there like specific other spaces, F lists, things like that, where you kind of like find people?
So kind of the interesting thing too is, we kind of talk about how transformation is a kink. And when we think about, kink nature and all that stuff, it's one of many things that can be, bundled up together as a package. So one of the kind of common ones that I visited is F list. That's probably the most, I would say, infamous one, but kind of where a lot of people will flock to, where it's not just for transformation, it's for other kinks as well. But it's kind of a place where, like, if you wanted to find a certain, niche, a kink, you'll probably find it there. But for other places, they use Discord as well here, and Telegram as, kind of like, peer-to-peer chat clients. But really kind of, like I said, as, COIC was the original one, but now as the internet's kind of evolved, there's kind of a more open space to have that. But still, there's always going to be new opportunities that pop up for people to kind of explore that transformation in a sense.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I mean, CYOC is very like Web 1.0, especially like, you go back and you look at it and you're like, yeah, that's the design from like the 90s and like early aughts. You can really see the visual flair there, which is kind of funny.
And kind of in a way too, like with COIC, if anyone has never visited, what it was basically a choose your own adventure story, but it was for transformation. And so in a sense that was kind of role play, because you would fill out a portion of the story either leading to a transformation or the transformation itself, and then you would expect a reply of someone continuing on the story or continue on the transformation. But like I said, as it has evolved now it's kind of more like there's still message boards, but people kind of want
Yeah.
more instant action. So chat based ones is kind of the more route where people go to now. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I will also say about CYOC, one of the things that they have that I did like, beyond, of course, like the interactive kind of storytelling format, there are a number of TF stories, like standalones, that are archived on there that used to exist on other places on the internet and have disappeared from them, but still exist on CYOC. There is some absolute bangers of inanimate TF stories on there, like 10 out of 10. And I appreciate that they've been archived there because they've disappeared from the other places online. So if CYOC was to ever go down, I would be very upset for that specifically, but in general, from like a historical sort of archiving perspective.
I think what would matter more is highlighting it, because any very large pool of content, highlighting certain things is really what matters as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Because if anybody can throw anything into it, you suddenly have to really explore. And even though you can find like some okay things, if you're saying, oh yeah, there's like good shit there, like really? Where? For the love of God, where?
I have all my favorites bookmarked, like straight up. They are not
Okay,
going
good.
anywhere.
You can start sharing some links with people at some point.
Yeah.
So they'll start asking you for it.
Yeah. I guess then, like, going back to like the role playing focus, in your experience, what do you think makes for a good role play? Like, what do you kind of look for when you are chatting with a new person and trying to figure out if maybe they would be a good role play partner?
So I would say for sure, like, I don't say like a level of commitment, but kind of understanding what they're getting at. Because I know we had this discussion before at Anthrocon. We were
Mm-hmm.
talking before, like, okay, I love werewolves, but if you're kind of into transformation, you kind of want to understand what the direction of what they need out of the werewolf transformation. Because when you talk about a transformation to kind of like our group in a sense,
Yeah.
people want to kind of know more about what really gets to you. Are you the type of person in a werewolf transformation that wants a full moon? Or are you the person in a transformation that wants to shape shift at will? What kind of direction do you like in a transformation? Do you like it painful? Do you like it pleasurable? Do you like to lose your mind to the instincts of the transformation itself? So,
Mm-hmm.
and once you like kind of understand what that person needs, then you can kind of really help them out and also kind of make a great scene of what they kind of want. Because I think sometimes too, when you're trying to talk to a person, and I think this doesn't just go with the role play, I think it just goes to just general chat, like one on one. There's a fear sometimes of, even though we're in the same, transformation sphere, if you're kind of new to it or you're kind of trying to explain what you need, there's like sometimes a fear of, even though we're the same person, I'm afraid that what I say might be shocking to you, and even
Mm-hmm.
it isn't. But there's that little anxiety of really getting to the core of what you like in a transformation. I think that sometimes people are a little bit shy to open up about that, and so it's kind
Mm-hmm.
of helping understand of what they really actually need, because sometimes they need like an experienced partner to kind of, I don't say force it out, but kind of like help them like nudge it.
Yeah, it's God, it's so hard over text to do that. And even with enthused people, the kind who approach you in the first place, you can get left holding the bag for what to do next, which makes for a very unpleasant experience when you are the one doing all the work, doing all the direction, and really putting yourself into it while the other one's just kind of like going along for the ride.
But it is a good point, though. I will just say, of like, when you're new at it, it can be really hard to even say what you want, and so when you're going in that dialogue back and forth, sometimes someone might not even know how to respond, so they almost have to take that like riding along position at first.
I get that. I guess I also just wanted to. I was going to get to the fact that I think it's a great idea to think about what they're looking for. Yeah. I mean, everybody's got needs and boundaries. I think most reasonable people can feel those out well enough, but that's a really good one. It's like, what are you looking for out of this in particular? Because yeah, it's all about wants. It's supposed to be for fun. Yeah,
and I'll say too, and this kind of like it's kind of a bundled package, but it goes with the like, kind of the yin and yang of transformation in terms of art and writing. When people see art, obviously their eyes see whatever they want to see and kind of comprehend. But where the words come in, it's kind of like, oh, this is what's happening. This is actually turning me on. And I think that sometimes when people, if they can't do art, they want to write. And then what happens is, though, they see a piece of art and they're trying to understand and really type up the words of what a person's going through and what are the senses and all that stuff. And I think, from role play, that kind of helps develop that skill set of, if I can't do art or that's not my forte, then I want to kind of describe in detail of the scene that's going on. And so that's kind of where I was like talking about how when I first started writing, it was through role play because I couldn't find the stuff that I wanted. But then as I was kind of developing those details and scenes, I could be able to kind of picture something without, right now, if I was to like, hey, Auntie, can you make a story for me like about clowns, even though that's not my forte, but I can like, I'm so experienced now that I can probably write a detailed story about someone turning into a clown, and I don't need a picture to give me that input like, okay, this is what needs to happen. But I think that's where like people come in time, they're like, oh my god, this is artwork, this is so great, I can't do it, but I need to describe it. I think that's where that anxiety of, trying to, okay, can you please RP, because I sell this artwork and I want to replicate this in a scene, but I don't really know what I want. And I think that's where it comes into play.
Yeah, and obviously, I think one of the things that goes hand in hand with roleplay as well is the fact that you're getting that live dialogue that's almost building the story in your mind. And so having someone else also, like, versus writing solitarily, when you have someone else who is feeding into that fantasy and responding in a way that really meshes with you, it can make it even more powerful, because it's almost like someone else has like partnered with you here to bring the content that, like you said, you really want to see replicated in written form to match up with, say, a picture or an idea that you have. And when you find that sort of connection, it can be really impactful, right?
Exactly. And I think another thing too is that I know AI is becoming a thing, and I know there's been actually some chatbots that do transformations, but the thing is, you're talking to a computer. And I think one of the magical things about roleplay that people like at times too is that there could be a sudden randomness, like, okay, I tell you about a scene that I really want to do, but at the end of the day, that the person on the other end is a human, and they could describe something to you that you've never thought of before, and it clicks to you like, wow, I never thought of this, and it's totally like I never expected it. And I think that's what kind of gets at people, where between wish fulfillment and kind of like being forced into a transformation, it's like sometimes when you ask people to transform you, you kind of like, I feel kind of like this is not what I wanted, but like when you're being forced, you're allowing yourself to be transformed by someone else without your control. And it's kind of like if it's so unexpected, but it totally hits your cores of what you need, you feel kind of like validated in what you've kind of searched for. And I think that's why a lot of people kind of agonize over role play, is that they're searching for that type of validation in a way of, okay, this person totally gets what I've always needed.
The way to verbalize this in a way that I think a lot of people can understand is you can either masturbate or you can have somebody else do it for you.
Exactly.
No matter how good, no matter how good a time you can have on your own, it is always uniquely better, or at least uniquely good, when somebody else is taking the wheel for that. So, in your description of an AI and how that works, where a human could throw a variable at you and the AI will be programmed to essentially feed into what you want to hear, which can be great. But in that sense, that's why I would refer to it in these cases as a sex toy.
Pretty much.
And I'll say like the harmony, sort of the kind of harmony you can get with somebody when they throw in an idea or perspective. Yes, that's very fun. So I do appreciate that you brought up that, if anybody's thinking of chat bots for RP, then yeah, I think they could consider that. It is tough to get somebody who matches your wavelength, because as I keep telling people, especially with this, because transformation is so varied and nobody's going to have the exact same interests you have. Nobody. There's going to be somebody who will agree with you on everything. And then at some points, you're both going to have a thing for each other where you're just kind of like, nah, I don't get it. But the point is that you have the general vibe. And once you find somebody like that, you can expand each other's interests and enjoy a lot of things that you want. And only people will really be able to give you that. And I guess that's also my way of saying that if RP is a big deal for you and you want to keep doing it, looking for I don't know, just every now and again, however often it happens, it's just really nice when you can find somebody to do that with.
Exactly. And like I said, that's in the end, like I said, you talk about masturbation, all that stuff. And I think, like I said, I think sometimes people just, they want to be validated, because I know there's been some times where someone has maybe a specific mermaid type of transformation that no one can really give them to them, so they struggle on and on and on to find that partner that can really describe a transformation that they've always been thinking about, but really can never find a person to deliver it. And so once they find it, it's kind of like, oh my God, I've waited all these years to, find someone that understands me and understands what I've always felt for this type of transformation. I think that's been kind of, like I said, it's not just about just the transformation itself. It's about kind of like a person's own personal interest and validation of, okay, I'm understanded. I'm not really weird, because I think sometimes, especially in the transformation, because we're talking about a person maybe shifting from a normal human to a certain type of fool toy. It's why am I having these thoughts? Why do I have a feeling I want to be inflated and pop? Am I going insane because I shouldn't be? It's not like I'm not thinking about being killed by popping. I'm thinking being reformed into something else, but yet it makes me feel weird.
It's the sensation.
Exactly.
The sensation alone is the thing that matters. Just like the specific people who are into birth, and someone was breeding, no, I don't want to breed anything. I just want to see eggs. I want carefree fun.
Exactly.
There is that distinction to be made, just like what it is with popping. There's this one commissioner, SL1, who has gotten a lot of work of this I don't know if it counts as a Google character or something like that, but it's always fill to pop, and the pop is the euphoria, and the character is specifically designed to do that over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I did want to actually touch on something though before we get too far away from it. When we were talking about the AI bots, and I think this ties in a little bit to kind of the role playing stuff that we've talked about. I will say from personal experience, I used to do a lot of role playing and I got burned one too many times and then I got jaded and I stopped. And some of these AI bots are quite good. There was one actually that Blue Balls made. It was like a magic dragon guy. I think his name was Dorazon or something. I like messed around with that one and I had better like role plays than I've had in fucking ages. But I guess what I'm asking with that is, a lot of people I think they are looking for exactly what you're saying, really looking for that person who can respond back and they can go through so many different not great experiences and then kind of get jaded. So my question for you is almost have you like had to grapple with any of that sort of like feeling of jadedness, and if not, how do you think you were able to kind of best connect with someone who like gave back to you the energy that you were looking for and putting out?
The other initial is like, I don't want to say tough it out, but it's kind of like in transformation. I think that's a lot of things that there's a lot of it's almost, I kind of say a transformation itself is a very selfish kink because it's relying on what your personal interests are. And so I think if you were to say like, are you a person that loves to be transformed versus do you like to transform people? I think 80-90% would probably say I would love to be transformed and not really transform a person. So
yes.
and I think there's a lot of jadedness because of that ratio of people that transform versus not transform in a role play. And I think that's where kind of find that person. So for me, going through the motions, it's like I couldn't find a person that could really hit my interest. So I said, you know what? I'm gonna take time away to not be focusing myself as being the person that gets transformed, and I'm gonna actually devote my time to actually start transforming people. And I think what happens too is that once they kind of see that you have a reputation of transforming people, they actually would be a little bit open to do mutual transformations as long as they're the first person and they'll do it back to you. So it's kind of like sometimes kind of understanding too, like, are you a person that is really not really reciprocal? Because sometimes it's reputation based where like, okay, this person is just, they're always going to be asking for to be transformed, but they're not really going to be reciprocal of like giving back. So, sometimes it's a reputation, but like I said, you can be jaded easily too about that.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I wouldn't necessarily say it's a selfish kink. Everybody wants to be pleasured in the way they want to be pleasured. It shouldn't have to be said. I think it's far more easily noticed with this because the one who has to do it to the other has to really put in the work. It's easy to say like, oh, I do this to you. And it's like, oh, then that feels good. But if you're writing it, then you have to really thoughtfully target the buttons of the other person and make it so that the experience is worthwhile for both of you, really. Because if you're not getting a reaction from somebody else, then you're also not having any fun. And I wouldn't say it's selfish, but in a way that that is more demanding. It is more than one-sided. I would dare say that anybody who likes to be changed would do well to describe their own feelings, and how they are enjoying it, because then that would give the person doing the work something to work with. If you are just like, oh yeah, give me more, my groin feels good, and that's all you're giving, then that's gonna be like, fuck, man, I know it feels good, but give me something more.
Yeah. It is definitely what Antti said, though. I do want to like pick on that too. Like, it is true that there is a massive imbalance between the TF doms and the TF subs.
Yes,
and, that has always been a problem.
Dom. And I'm a dom, so I've noticed that it's just like, hey, want to turn me into something? Fuck, man, You know what? No. I do know how that feels, and you know, and honestly, because I want to pick this up too, the fact that when you're role playing, and you know, you've already talked about like being burned, having to like have like a give and take that really helps spur things along, and specifically when you said that people who don't draw end up wanting to write. And if you're role playing and it's not going so well, it proves very, very quickly that you have to. The good writing takes a lot more effort than a lot of people give credit for.
Exactly.
Because people look at solid visual art, and if they know enough, they start thinking, oh, the hours of practice, the years of experience, you know, the library of knowledge that you have to build up, you know, is so fucking overwhelming if you're not just into like wanting to do it. You know, if your motivation isn't there, the art is too hard to make. So you go and write. You're like, I can just talk about my thing and use some flowery language. I mean, people can do it.
Exactly.
Even like people who aren't like, you know, literarily proficient or have a big vocabulary, they can tell things in creative ways that can really get you into a story. You know, they can. But to like really thoughtfully do it consistently, holy shit, that takes effort. So whenever I've done role play and or written something and people have come back to me like, holy shit, that was actually really good, I'm happy because I don't really write. But if I do and it has an effect on people, then I know I did something right. This also means that anything I do later on, I'd like to improve on. But yeah, just, you know, that's why people who have like writing as their passion, I take a look at and I'm like, okay, let me see. Because it can come from a few different places of motivation. And if you're using writing as a substitute for visual art, you're not going to have a good time.
And I like to say too, and as I discovered, you know, as I'm kind of been helping transforming people, I know that my skills are good, and when I really get to them, and you know that like, okay, they're probably, you know, masturbating on the other side of on their side of the computer, because you can kind of tell, like, you know, the replies are getting shorter and they're trying to, you know, use one hand on their dick and then the other one on their keyboard. But it's just kind of like you know that you got them, because and that's kind of a thrill for me in a sense where you've got really to what their needs are in their core and they're really aroused about it. So, you know, I think that's kind of this thing as I discovered, not just about really what interests me in transformation, but understanding what interests others in transformation. And also kind of you're developing, as you're hearing all these stories about what interests people, you start kind of developing, I don't say like a skill set, but kind of a library of like, okay, if like 10 people are talking about the same type of, you know, pool toy or latexification type of scenes, this is probably something that resonates with a lot of people because it's being talked about over and over and over. So you really, even if they're kind of shy, like another person is shy about talking about maybe what interests them in latex, you know, from like so much experience of talking to others, like, okay, if I was to say this, you know, you can feel like latex covering over your body and it's steaming, and it's like, wait a minute, I never knew this was going to happen before, and now this is getting arousing. So it's just using that knowledge base of what really gets at people to really kind of broaden, like I said, what gets to them in a transformation, and maybe they're just too shy to talk about it, but searching for that person to really hit them hard in what they need.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, sometimes it can feel a little rote, but the TF tropes that do exist for a reason, because a lot of people, like you said, it resonates with them and they go back to that well again and again because that's the thing that's kind of hitting on the horny nug for them. So I definitely agree with that. There's a reason why there are a lot of common tropes that people see. And, you know, there's also people who obviously are very into the idea of subverting those or doing things that you don't really see often also hats off to those people. But I think to your point, it's really good to note that a lot of people are looking for things that do kind of like start to like align after a certain while, which, you know, is good because it's like someone's figuring out what exactly it is that they want. Or, you know, in the case of people who just open their interests, it's like you're discovering more things that you can like vibe with now.
And I think too, as well, when you're in role play, I don't want to say you're pushing a person, but I think sometimes the person that is getting transformed, they want to kind of ride the edge of what makes them comfortable and what makes them uncomfortable. And I think the closer they get to the edge, but they know they're not going over, I think that really hits something that, like I said, it hits more than transformation itself. I think it's such it's a deep personal level where they're so thankful that, like, okay, I'm not a freak of nature, and I've have all these dreams that I've been really afraid to talk to others, or just because if I said like something other, I'd be kind of like, oh, wait a minute, even though I'm in transformation, I'm kind of an oddball. Well, you're not really an oddball because there's probably other people like you out there that maybe they're just afraid as well, or you just never found them before. I think that's what I think this goes just beyond roleplay. I think roleplay helps it out, but there's layers more than just that. So
yeah.
It's definitely helpful because then you finally get the solid proof. Because when somebody else is comfortable enough to express the stuff pretty much at any level, you end up forming a connection. And like even to the earlier points about finding out what people want and it being validating, it is this desire for connection that we want. I find transformation to be a very intimate thing. So, that's why whenever I paint something, it's usually like alone, two people, done like couple, like one or two, like threesome sort of things. It's like a very vulnerable thing. So if I'm going to be thinking about how this affects other people, I think like, yes, if you're stuck in your own head with this, and if somebody's going to be either, coming along to your boundaries with that, or you're inviting them in, when that goes over well, it feels great. There's so many gray areas and things that people can just find strange, and I just mean strange. Let's not even get into like what people would consider good or bad. Like, it can just be so odd that the judgment from people that it is odd can be crushing. So, yes, there is value in making connections through like RP and sometimes and stuff. I guess that's another reason why I have really I have long since turned down solicitations for that shit.
Exactly.
Hi, DURP. Who are you? This is very personal for me. You may not think so, but I have discovered that I don't want just anybody spending like using up my time and my energy in order to give you a good time, because this will ultimately be for you more than for me, because I wasn't asking you, you're asking me. Which is like, now I think to myself, okay, so if you started with RP before you were writing, how did you go about finding partners? Because, you could just ask people, and I think that generally speaking, it is okay to ask people. It's all about the execution. So, like, where did you go? What kind of etiquette did you feel was best? Did you feel like you ended up getting a good amount of people who gave, satisfactory give and take experience?
So, kind of like how I went about it is that, like you said, like a lot of things I see is like, for Affinity, no, it's like, why would you do that? That's, really for Affinity. I mean, I don't use the message boards, and I think they turned them off now. I think that's been transitioned. But really, like,
they're becoming a Discord now or something.
Yeah, sending out notes for Affinity, it's like, why would you do that? That's really, it's more for an art site. So like, what I would do on the chat side is like, okay, I would look in the chat room, see who's on, and like, this is like really old days where you didn't really know what they like. So I would kind of like see how they interacted. Like, does this person sound like they're mature enough, or is this person like really acting childish? So if this someone is acting mature, then they probably, if even if it didn't work out, that they at least be a reasonable person. Because sometimes I think there's a lot of etiquette too of when you're going through like this is because it's a very personal thing. You want to be sure that the person on the other end is going to be respectful and very, you know, if they turn you down, they'll say like, "I'm not interested, sorry," all that stuff. And so, really, kind of understanding like, okay, is this person going to be mature, and then kind of understanding too, like in a chat room, and like, what like, are they interested in anthro transformation? And if they start talking about it or latexification, okay, now I kind of understanding like what they kind of like. Me, is it weight gain? And then after kind of like understanding and seeing what this person's like, I would send a message to them like, "Hey, would you be interested in doing a scene based on this?" Because I would kind of have a initial understanding of what they could possibly like, and if it was something that I want to kind of search for, then I would kind of reach out. So just kind of doing like a little investigation, seeing what they're like, but not really. Okay, this person is aligning with everything what I always wanted, and I'm gonna quickly reach out to them. For me, it was just kind of doing some research on the person and understanding before I made the initial move. Like, okay, is this person kind of aligning with what I want? Because when you're doing a commission to a person, you don't want to like go right away like, hey, give me a commission of an art piece. You want to take your time, formulate a plan of what you want, and then send it out. And it's just the same way of finding a partner. Be like, hey, I saw you're probably interested in this. Would you be interested in doing a scene with something like this? And from going that, just kind of describing some details of what you want to do and see if we align.
Damn.
Yeah, I can see that. Because I mean, this ties into like this approach can be used in general for like socializing. I do agree that if you're going to approach people for any kind of work, you should get a sense as to what they might agree to before possibly pushing a boundary. And by pushing a boundary, I only mean in terms of like subject matter, like raw subject matter. If they like drawing medieval stuff for armor or environments, things like that. And in terms of doing that kind of research to approach people, I think that's pretty good. I think that could also be, because I'm pretty sure you do this if you approach people, is you go hello, and you state your intention and the reason that you want to talk to them in the first place, without giving them a manifesto or your whole life story. It's like, hi, I noticed that you seem to have a thing for this. I kind of do too, and I really like the way you do this and that, and I just I wanted to, like, I don't know, maybe do something with you with this, or maybe even or I don't know, or just hear your thoughts about it, because maybe then we could do something. Yeah, I think I think you could take all this from like approaching people for RP and for art, and it's just socializing in general. If you're going to greet somebody, a flat hello puts all the work on someone else. Someone else vocalized this, I think in like a TikTok or something, and it was shown to me, and I was just like, oh yeah, that's exactly what it is. And you get like the flat hi, you're like, what kind of work do you want me to do now? You want to talk to me? Tell me why you want to talk to me. So if you're going to RP with somebody, it's like, hi, you RP? You know what? Yes or no doesn't really matter, does it? Because now it's going to have to be like, why? What do you want? What is it? Where did you find me? And it's just like, now I'm asking you all the questions. Like, please, fucking think.
Yeah, and I think that sometimes too the meme we always talk about in transformations, like you get a note on FA or you get a DM on Twitter, and it would just say hi, and there's like no context of what the fuck is, like, why are you saying hi to me? Are you trying to reach out for an RP? Are you trying to just talk to me? And I think that's kind of that shyness of like, just kind of understand people and just general communication of, because I think sometimes too is like, and I go back to it, like we're a niche community, I mean, I don't know how many years, but it's more spelled in the furry community. But I think sometimes there's, like I said, a shock of like talking to someone that, okay, you're interested in transformation. It's like I live in Ireland and like I know a lot of people in the US and like, I don't know how to communicate. Well, we like the same thing. Like just do a simple communications like, hey, I saw you like to do like werewolves. Can we talk about werewolves and all that stuff? And like a lot of people just like, well, not all people, but like what happens is just like hi, and they just are shy to talk about more other things. So it's not just like RP as RP, but really RP and anything else, like you said, Libra. Just kind of general communication and just like revealing yourself as we're not weird people. We're normal people with normal jobs and normal lifestyles. It's just that we're all interested in one thing, and it's not really that shocking.
It's hard because I feel stuck between sympathy and frustration because I tried very hard, as I'm pretty sure both of you did.
Oh yeah.
Whenever you did this stuff, you really wanted it to be a worthwhile experience, and you're also kind of doing it hoping like, yeah, please, me too, like, and like, man, it's so tough to get that reciprocation, and it's tougher than it needs to be, and blah blah blah, and one of the frustrations is kind of like, hey, I'm making myself just as vulnerable as you are, like, please, like, at least progressively open up to at least the same level, matching the person's tone and frequency, you know what I mean? It's why people also can be really put off by the prospect of roleplay, even though it can be a lot of fun. Like, holy shit, man, I do miss it. It's really, really fun. But, depending on the kind of person you are, and if you're like me and you find it to be kind of intimate and you're like, well, I really want to feel more comfortable with this, no matter how much I want it. Yeah, it's difficult. Like, I almost lost my train of thought because I got really upset about it.
Well, like I said, it's so just, it's not just really about transforming people, but you're also like discovering things about yourself. You're discovering things about other people, and you're learning about your vulnerabilities, like you said, and also boundaries, because you have to be comfortable as well, and not just being someone, like being a partner for someone else. You have to have your own boundaries, and if you're not feeling comfortable in doing that, then yeah, you say, well, I don't want to RP with you because it doesn't make me feel happy about it.
Not only that, but reinforcing your own boundaries, because you can RP and then kind of feel the pressure to perform. Yes, you can, as weird as that sounds. And some people are just kind of like, man, that kind of sucked because I was hoping they'd eventually do whatever, but I didn't say no, and I was kind of hoping they'd do this. And yeah, it's like also reinforcing your own boundaries, even if at the start, like yes or no is less of the thing to think about. Like Zil, fucking, you said that like you used to do it a lot. But, like, what was it? Like, now I'm wondering, because, like, okay, first of all, for both of you, like, Zil, you said you don't do it anymore. Auntie, I don't know if you still do it, but if you don't, what was the breaking point? Like, what made you feel like, yeah, fuck this, I'd rather just not do it unless it's the right person?
Well, for me, I'm still doing it, but I'm writing less stories just because of work-life balance. Because, like I said, as long as you stay in the transformation fandom, and like I'm in my 30s, so I have a real life job. So if I can't write a story, but I still want to contribute in transformation in a way, I'll commission artwork. But if I want to do something personal of me, I'll do role play. So it's finding work-life balance and treating yourself as having fun and not being a resource for other people. I think that's a boundary too.
Yes, please. It's something that I hear from some people, like, man, I finally get to give something back to the community. Like, no, you don't really have to give anything back. What some people need to understand is that no matter how much validation you're looking for in a community, you do have to come first. There's no fan base without the content creator, without the artist. So fucking do things for you.
So let me ask you a question, Libra.
What?
So, do you sometimes feel like, even though you're in transformation, that you feel like you're like a machine to the fandom, or a resource where you feel, I know, I don't say you feel pressure, but there's just some kind of aura that you got to create something, and it because of that it kind of doesn't feel fun anymore. It feels like you're working a job more than it's a hobby.
So for me, it's a matter of really wanting to communicate with people, and if people seem to not understand or not listen, that frustrates me.
Mm-hmm.
Apathy hurts a lot when it comes to a number of artists. If you're putting stuff out into the void and you have a certain understanding and expectation, you could be okay just posting to nothing and no one and saying, "Oh yes, this is a convenient way to share my work with other people," if the time arises. But I would get frustrated when in a space that has a bunch of people who clearly want so much more. Where it's like, hey, I'm here, I'm different, surely you would like something new and different, because different things can be very interesting. And then I've felt, and at least in a few cases that I've actually been able to notice, been like snubbed for like other content or other artists. And I'm kind of like thinking to myself that it hurts, because I like so many kinds of styles. I like so many kinds of concepts. I enjoy like a fairly broad range of things, and I'm willing to give a lot of things a chance. And I don't understand how people can call themselves open-minded and receptive when they don't give people the credit for that. And if it comes to my role as to whether I'm a machine that's supposed to produce for other people, it's not so much that as I wanted to lend my voice and my presence to a space that I felt was lacking things I wanted to see. Even if it's something that everybody else already likes that I happen to enjoy, I want to show them what I enjoy about it, and express that. And if nobody notices, then I feel like I'm losing the points of sharing it at all, which kind of kills my drive to create and add to the pool of content.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of artists who have come and gone, I think, have touched on that sense of, I'm putting something out and I'm not really getting the response that I was kind of hoping for, and then that frustration turns to apathy, and then that apathy turns to why am I here, and the why am I here turns to leaving, for lack of a better kind of pipeline. So it's tough. I did want to get back to the question you did ask me before about why it was that I stopped doing role playing myself personally. Yeah. I don't think there was a specific incident that really sparked it, but I just noticed that the people that I really clicked with, some kind of disappeared, some moved on from doing roleplay themselves, and I kind of had a dwindling list of people who I would actually like engage with on that front, and I just found that I didn't have the energy to try and sift through new people to find like kind of new role-playing partners. And so it got to the point where, I could count the number on one hand of people that I would actually do a role play with, and we don't do that much at all anymore. Like, it just doesn't really happen. So, it was kind of a slow petering off for me, and I definitely don't have the energy nor the time to look for new role-playing partners. But I mean, I will say one thing, even if I don't do that kind of role play anymore, I've noticed that when I have engaged with this kind of kink stuff, like IRL with another person, I do think about those lessons that I've learned from role playing. And I was always a little bit more of like a fluid, I could do either one. I've noticed in person I'm like 100% a TF Dom, and that kind of is interesting to me. But
oh, really?
Yeah.
I would have. Look. I was absolutely sure. I totally assumed that you could give and get it, but I really, really figured you to be the ones who want to take it more.
Yeah, I'm surprised myself too, but in all of those like IRL situations, I have like 100% been like the dominant force in that interaction. And I don't know, I think part of it is also like, and I think this builds on something you were saying, Auntie, before, getting to see someone else kind of, you push their buttons and then they turn to like putty almost between your hands, and you can like really like continue to feed into that.
Mm.
There's something really nice to see that in person that I think online doesn't always capture.
Mhm.
And maybe that was kind of like the deciding factor in terms of me going towards that. But it kind of aligns with what I think you've kind of laid out, Antifreeze, in terms of like when you are getting those shorter responses and you know that you are getting them in a way that really resonates, it can be personally very satisfying.
And I think that sometimes too, like, I know there was, before the pandemic, there was a lot of, adult transformation panels at like the like Anthrocon
Yeah.
and Vernal Equinox. And I think that's kind of like people, they, like I said, not just validation, but I don't want to say that they, like I said, it's about being weird, but I think
Mhm.
it's the understanding, like, being in that real, like, not real life, but being in real life, being in a room with all those people and hearing their own unique uh transformation stuff. It makes them feel like, wait a minute, if I'm thinking about becoming a statue, that really, it doesn't make me feel weird. It makes me just feel like, okay, I like this one specific thing. And it doesn't really have to be adult, but really just being in a room with so many, normal people, but discussing what they like about a transformation. It doesn't make you feel like you're a weird person. It makes you feel like you're normal, or like, okay, I like certain things that other people may not like, but that doesn't make me weird. This makes me that I have my own certain things that get to me, and other people have their own certain things that get to them. That doesn't change anything. I'm just my own specific person, because I could have, something about being a dragon where maybe you like being a dragon as well, but we have different sub kinks that we like about it, and maybe we don't align on it, but it doesn't make us, different. It doesn't make, we don't have to get angry at each other. It just makes us our own unique people, and what we feel and what we resonate with transformation.
Yeah, it's a lot about connection. Community means communicating, and it benefits from some more of that and improving at it as you go along. I just, because for me, I was just noticing like the increasing like selfishness of a lot of people. So there's just like, yeah, like, do this to me, like, oh, this is really good, and it's just like, oh, can we do it again next time? And I'm like, no, man, I'm here for you, and right, this ain't for me. And also, I'm glad you enjoyed. Find someone else now.
I will say though, alternatively, there are definitely some people who it's like, yes, I'm doing all of the work, but part of the appeal also comes from like, okay, I'm doing all the work, now I'm going to tell you to do something. And then if the person does that, it's like, oh,
that's if I
okay.
that's if I have any interest in the other person.
I guess. Fair enough. I mean, that is something I enjoy. So,
No, I get it, because I've had interesting reactions that the only thing I can, not the only thing I can say, but the only thing I'll say now before making this like about me is like, yes, fun shit has happened because I have RP'd with people and pressed their buttons. I feel very good about that. I feel very confident about that. Haven't gotten a single complaint. I'll tell you that.
That's good. That's good. I guess I was curious then as well, because Auntie, obviously you do a lot of writing now in particular, and that kind of stemmed as an evolution from some of the role playing you did. How did you like do that transition? Because I know that for a lot of people, they might get really into role play and they like the back and forth, but they can find it really difficult to take that energy and then turn it into like a solitary solo activity of writing out a transformation. How did you kind of like surmount those kinds of barriers?
Well, it wasn't like something that totally clicked, but it did say I did notice that as I was writing, I was becoming so detailed, and like
Mhm.
I was kind of like being able to write not just for myself as my own character, but I could write for another character. And it was just clicking in a sense of, okay, I'm getting this much detail that I had to feel like, okay, I don't need to rely on another person to do my writing for me or to
Mhm.
react. So I can do one person and I can do another person. I can have one person change the other. And so that was able to kind of give me a signal that once I was getting that detailed, that I could easily make a story. Now, this is role play, so really, there are some people sometimes where they're focused on grammar and all that stuff. And when I started writing, this was about 10 years ago, so I wasn't the best at English. I mean, and I'm not sure. I'm sure other people are not good as well, but it was just through trial and error of just like, okay, fuck it, I'm gonna make a story, see if that clicks with people, and then okay, even if it didn't get any comments or views, I'm still gonna keep on doing it and just making repetition, and just never stopping because I knew that there was always people out there that had, you know, they're looking for a werewolf transformation, but they're looking for a certain flavor of it, and they couldn't find people that really understood it. So I knew that it wasn't just a transformation of making stories, but understanding now that with this knowledge of having so many role plays, I knew what would get to people because I've interacted with so many people about werewolves that I could use this knowledge to handcraft a story that people go, yes, this is what I've
Mhm.
always been searching for. I've seen it in art, but I couldn't find the right story that hit the mood where, okay, this wasn't totally not consensual, but it wasn't consensual. It was something that hit the sweet spot of it. It was a little bit painful, but it was a lot of pleasurable, and it was very erotic. And it had detailed transformations where, okay, you just grew out a tail. Well, why can't the tail, be stretched out a little bit longer in terms of how it grows? How does it feel growing? Does the person, how does the person react to it? And I think that's where people are looking for in a story as well, with not just the details, but all the things that encompasses a transformation.
So you like the idea of being able to still get to people through your writing because, like, when you've RP'd and you want to transition into writing, you like just stories and everything, you end up wanting to still do that
Exactly.
instead of like would that mean that your aim isn't quite expression as it is affecting other people? Like, do you think more about getting a rise out of people more than being like, oh, yes, this is something that I want to show other people that I enjoy?
Exactly. Because I always kind of refer to one of my main passions outside of transformations that I like to watch as a hobby, and I think we've talked about it before, is professional wrestling. And using professional wrestling, there's a thing called heat, or just making people upset or angry, but really drawing a reaction out of it. And that's kind of always what I've always liked about transformation, is not just what I like about how people transform, but understanding when something like a new piece of art drops, or when something comes out of media that really gets to people, and seeing how they react to it. I want to be able to craft those responses as well, where I want to get them aroused, because I know from experience of transforming people in role play that I want to get that same reaction to people, but even better. So it's kind of a competitive spirit where I want to be that better person.
So unless if you're not in the WWF to be the WWF champion, then you shouldn't be in the WWF. Is that what you're telling me? Are you giving me the Stone Cold Steve Austin philosophy of why you're here and what you're doing?
Exactly, because I mean, or I'm always prefer the Dusty Rhodes, but either way, I'm here to react.
Okay. Wait, hold on. Heel or face? What are you doing?
Oh, it's a totally heel because
Oh, okay.
because I don't want to totally segue out of it, but basically between a heel and a face can always go forward. That's their drive. That's how they do it. But a heel can go like sideways. They can go whatever it is. And as a person,
they can creatively be a piece of shit. And yes, for anybody who doesn't watch wrestling, because there's plenty of you motherfuckers who haven't. Yes, heel bad guy, face good guy. Well, motherfucker, you have had it explained.
But
you have any more questions? We can make this like a bit of a side wrestling thing at any time. But even though I don't watch it anymore because I am a filthy crotchety fuck by the standards that we have now, but I know some stuff. So wait a minute. Are you looking to offend people? Are you looking to get them in the comments? Be like, the next time the starter shows up, I hope they write a story about you in a no holds barred scenario where you get totally bitched out and you totally are and you're the one who's like a fucking writhing mess in your new body.
At the end of the day, I want
that's
people...
the only way I'm thinking of it. Because now it's combat. So okay, no, but okay, wait, seriously.
Well, let him answer the question.
No, I'm fighting here now.
No, you have to. Well, then I'm gonna be the referee. Let him answer the question first.
Libra, I said I want to be the person that comes into the arena. People throwing soda at me. People throwing chairs. They hate me. I come into the ring. They want to see me get my ass kicked. And, I fight the hero of the thing, and I'll cheat. And I'll make them come back to the next show to see if that happens.
Right now. See, because you did the exact thing that the heel gets as the advantage with the referee. You play with the referee and get their way. Good shit. You are definitely a heel.
That's what, for me, that's what it is when you're transforming people, because you have to be the evil scientist. You have to be the instigator. You're going to be doing...
I wouldn't say that.
No.
You don't have to be like the evil scientist necessarily, but that's the role you choose then, right?
Exactly. But, yeah.
Okay. So in that respect, like that's your heel gimmick. You impose your will on the subject, and it's just kind of like, here's how I do shit when I'm in charge, like that.
Not just that, but I also want to get the audience attention, and I want them to boo me, I want them to hate me, and I want them to come back to see if I get my ass kicked. That's what I want.
All right, so it's like a mix of that with like the Howard Stern effect, because the way I think of it is in fucking Private Parts, I always remember this is like, oh, he's got like this huge base of people listening. It's like, well, what are people saying? It's like, well, people who are listening to him to say they want to see what he'll say next. It's like, so why do the people hate him listen to it? It's like, because they want to hear what he'll say next.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez. Well, we to rein it back in from the wrestling, although I've enjoyed that, we do have some audience questions that I would like to get through. And one of them I think is interesting because it was pitched as potentially causing Libra to go on a rant. So
I thought you wanted somebody else to talk for a while.
I did. Well, I'm going to give you another opportunity. So Max Velocity asks, what are your thoughts on hive mind TFs at risk of causing a rant from Libra? So, Libra, do you have a rant for us?
I don't exactly know what you mean by that. I can only extrapolate what I assume is just somebody's consciousness being overridden by a central command sort of thing, hence the hive mind, or perhaps a collaborative sort of shared consciousness. See, the question is upsetting because I think of several things. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to just say that I like autonomy. I always really enjoy autonomy. If you want somebody to be a part of a hive mind, go ahead. I don't really know what to say to that. If you think it's going to cause I'm curious as to why a rant was expected from me about it, but I'm a little too confused to even rail on anything. Because I'm just not sure. If you can give me a more narrowed down question, if it makes it to the next episode, you might get one out of me if that's what you're really looking for.
So what you're saying is Max Velocity, ask a follow-up question, and we'll see if we can get that rant for you.
I mean, yeah, let's narrow it down for me a bit. Otherwise, Otherwise, I can just complain about how I don't understand the question, then go into a bunch of other shit you probably didn't want to hear.
Yeah.
Or maybe that's the rant.
Oh, you never know. How about you, Antifreeze? What are your thoughts on hive mind TFs?
So, being, a role player, my thing is I always have to be open and understanding, even if I don't like everything. I still want to know what gets at people. So with hive mind transformations, it could be like a lot of things. I've seen some things with Borg. I've seen things with insects. I would always ask first, like, okay, you're talking about hive mind transformations. Can you really describe to me what you're thinking about? Like, with Libra saying, are you talking about a centralized system where one person controls everything about you? I would want to know more about their personal things towards hive mind. I wouldn't be like saying, I hate it, I don't like it, all that stuff. I would really like to inquire and understand for a person that likes hive mind, what really gets to them, and like how, and understanding that, like, with that, how can I really appease them and to get to them what they've always searched for but never gotten. So for me, I'm always open to understanding a person's, kink nature, and not really saying, "Oh, this is stupid," because it's not totally what I agree. Because you have to be open. You have to be, empathic about understanding other people. So for me, I like hive mind, but I would want to know more about what the individual person's likes and dislikes about certain things about the hive mind that would like to talk about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it. I know personally, in terms of how I've seen it portrayed, I keep it into two camps, like you said, Libra, of like, there's like the Borg-like TF, where like you kind of get overridden, or, for example, in Animorphs, when they TF into ants and then they're like, oh fuck, because now they have to like deal with the, like, oh, they almost like lose their own free will and can't like TF back. There's that element, and then the other side is like the Geth in Mass Effect, where it's like when you bring a bunch of them together, they all collectively like become like more intelligent and can like work with each other to figure shit out, but they all have like their own internal individual desires. I really like the latter. I'm not a fan really of the former. I've seen that done as well with like some like I guess like goo stuff, when like, if like the goo or parasite or like venom type thing is like taking over you. That can sometimes be played. Yeah, the symbiote thing. There we go. That's the word I was looking for. I've seen that too. That can be kind of interesting. That's
like
get behind that one,
that's like a coexisting consciousness thing. Like you can like differentiate your thoughts from its thoughts.
Well, which depends on the piece. Depends on the piece.
Depends on the piece. But since you brought up venom, that's why I brought up like that distinction. Yeah. And I mean, I think I want to say this too, because this could be like a really fascinating way to do like hive mind sort of thing. If you go in this part of the spectrum, is like, I remember in Voyager, Star Trek Voyager, yes. there was the time when Seven of Nine lost connection to the rest of the Borg, and it disturbed her because she was like, and typically it's set up as like a really horrific fate, understandably so. But, then it was suddenly humanized in a way that I never expected, where she was like, all the voices had left me, and I feel so alone now. And I'm just like, oh shit, that's good. Like the very vulnerability that there isn't like another at any given time to communicate with, to bounce an idea off of, to problem solve, is like, oh shit, there could be something fascinating in being part of a proverbial hive mind, or a collective consciousness. It's very interesting because, there you can do it that way, which I feel is not explored well enough, or you can do it in the horrific way. They do that in Berserk too.
And I can't,
Of course they do.
I can't remember. I was gonna say too. I can't remember. I can't remember the characters. It's one of the things in Fruits Basket. It kind of relates to it where
Oh yeah.
like a person. I can't remember the name of the. It was a girl, and she wanted to get away from the family because it was very abusive. And once
Mm-hmm.
the curse finally broke, though, like her boyfriend said, like it feels kind of lonely that what you always wanted to get away from now kind of feels lonely because now you're no longer connected to that system. So I think with high mind is that you're so connected to that system and following orders and following directives that once you're finally free of it, it kind of feels like you're lonely for the first time because you have yourself, your independence, but you're so used to not having that now uh, you miss that connection in a way.
Yeah. Awesome. And then the other question I had comes from Fire. And Fire asks, what do you feel would be a way to introduce the general public to transformation as a positive experience as opposed to specifically being a horror type or punishment sort of situation? I don't know, Auntie, if you have any thoughts on that to start.
I always start asking questions first. What do you mean by general public? Would you mean just like the overall like humanity itself? This is a general question, so it can mean anything. But like as a positive experience, you know, I would probably say, even though I lead towards more the semi dark aspects of transformation, I would probably say wish fulfilling, where someone what they've always wanted. It's a kind of a positive experience to finally get that. So that wish fulfillment, I think, is a good positive experience where something they've always strived to be and getting it. That's kind of good happiness and whatever. But like I said, I would have to ask a question of what do you mean by general public, and then from that I would start to kind of formulate, okay, this is what is a good starting point from it.
How about all right? So then let me narrow it down so that we can get an answer. Let's just say mainstream media then,
Mainstream media.
because the general public would involve creating an idea from almost any given person you talk to, and that usually comes through media.
So if we had to go through one thing, I would probably say a body change where they go from an average person to gaining muscles, and they're able to showcase it. So maybe they drink an elixir where uh, it talks about a transformation where they feel their body shifting and they can feel their muscles growing, and then being able to showcase from one YouTube video to another of their progress without having to exercise. That'd be something like that, or maybe becoming a furry or whatever. But something kind of that kind of aspect where they indicate their desire, their wish fulfillment, and then being able to show from point A to point Z of that transformation.
Pretty good answer. What about you,
Yeah.
Zil?
I mean, I feel like there have been a number of ways in which concept has kind of been introduced into media, and I think the reason why perhaps within the TF community doesn't always feel like that is because a lot of it is introduced in like children's media, whereas a lot of the transformation content that we see in more adult like settings is focused on horror or punishment. I think one of the ways that can really change the perspective to some degree is to Guillermo del Toro it and make it fuckable. I think that as soon as you take that route, people would actually be more like, oh, I think I can see why that is enjoyable. All it takes is seeing that someone wants to fuck a sea monster, and all of a sudden I'm like, yeah, she's valid. And I feel like having that, but like applied towards TF, would be one way to kind of change the, I guess, general public perspective on it, because it is quite rare to see it not in a horror setting. And there's a particular movie that comes to mind where it is introduced as kind of a fuckable thing, but we allude to that all the time, so I won't get too far into spring. But yeah, there's a lot that I think can be done when you take TF and put it into that sort of positive situation. And I wish there was more of that.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. If I want to talk about making it a mainstream thing,
But mainstream positive.
mainstream positive. I'm sorry. Very specifically to make it a positive thing. I do like both your answers. I think what's also important is willingness. You got to show people who want it, and I know that was already implied with what Auntie said, but less of an offer, right? A possibility, and more like here are people who indulge in this, and not only are they happy with it, they kind of live with it and around others in a positive way. That means like no like carelessly making other people change. I know so many people like it. It's like an LTFU and LTFU hee hee, like if it's just kind of like, hey, if you have people, showing off like that, you will have others be like, hey, can I be like you? And it's like, there you go. And then you can imagine that, that affects people when suddenly like your friend who, you and your friend like say, oh yeah, there's this werewolf and, I kind of dig it. I kind of dig like a lot of things about it. And then before you know it, you're asking it and you and your friend suddenly you're like, wait, I thought you weren't into it. It's like, I didn't either, but now, me too. And I want to be one. And then your friend would be like, do I want to be one too? It's like that. It's like eating the food yourself, in front of the baby to get them to eat. It's like that. Make sure that you can have a good time with it and there isn't a lot of risk. I think people drastically understate how off-putting it can be when it's just like, well, you're going to be stuck like that for the rest of your life. This form is better, so you shouldn't worry about it anyway. And, blah, blah, blah. This is more fun. When you force something on people like that, then it's not really great. That is a thing that a lot of people do not like. So have people enjoy it and have people be willing to share it if others want it. And also, for fuck's sake, use it to help people. It can be used to help people in a meaningful way and give people choices. Autonomy is so fucking important. That's why I like the idea of being a shapeshifter more than anything. Because the choice, the possibilities are liberating when they're not overwhelming. If you at least give people one other choice, that fucking expands your world big time.
And I would say too, and it kind of deals with role play in a way, but it deals with like general communication. Is one, communication, but also two, okay, you want to do something that's not horror or punishment. So I would say create guardrails. So if you want to do a transformation, think about it first. What would be considered horror or punishment? And if that doesn't fit within the guardrails, then throw it out. Having those guardrails of like, I want to create a transformation that's a positive experience. So have those guardrails that would define what you think is a positive experience, and then craft whatever you need. Because I think sometimes where people get so excited about a transformation, sometimes it becomes a little bit unethical and it bleeds over what they consider to be positive. And it's something like, well, if it's a little bit like dubcon, then it's still all right. Well, no, because now you're kind of bending what you want to do. So I think sometimes when you're thinking about a certain type of transformation, you want to explore it, create guardrails, and define what those guardrails are to create that transformation. Because once you put them up, you can kind of be able to avoid any unethical or things that kind of bleed over.
Well, yeah, and in this case, like I'll build on it because this is fun, and I know we can't go on too much longer, but I just like to get out there. You want to reframe the idea of the person who changes or is being changed as a victim. People default to the term victim to distinguish people who are being changed, and I think that's really fucked up because a victim is a very distinct sort of position to be in. That's why I say subject, because you can be subject to anything, you are the subject, the word term subject implies like a focus, a concentration, but a victim is just that, there's nothing they could do about it. They didn't ask for it. They don't really want it, So I think that would be like the key thing. Don't victimize the people who are changed or are changing. You always do like this like mixed curse blessing or whatever and shit like that. And it's delicate. That can be an entire episode as to what could make this mainstream and like change. Not mainstream. Yeah, specifically, I can't forget to make it positive in the eyes of other people.
Yeah.
As an entire discussion.
And I will say one of the other sets of terms that I actually like and use quite a bit is TFer and TFE. Like if you're the TFE, that's very like neutral. It's like, what is happening to you? I don't know. But you are the person TFing, so you're the TFE. So yeah, I always like to throw that one out there too.
Those are good too. Those are good. But I don't like victim. I think that unless you really know why you're saying it, please discard victim from your vocabulary for this shit. I don't like it, and I think it actually doesn't help with a lot of mindsets for like how you want to treat other people.
Mm-hmm.
It also doesn't make it appealing. It's like, hey, do you want to be my victim? It's like, shit, you could have used a different word. You probably would have had an RP partner, but you called me a victim.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Well, that was all the questions I think we had. I don't know, Auntie, if you have any other questions for us.
Yeah, the only question I kind of had is I know that you're on season 3 of this podcast. So what would you kind of say, and I don't want to say kind of get into long form, but like, have you kind of discovered more about transformation ever since you've done this podcast in a sense? Because I think, this has been kind of the most long going podcast ever about this, niche. Because I know there's been others, but it's been kind of every once in a while. But you guys been trying to crank one out every week, and discovering not just more about like OKR and writing, but now you have other people with other flavors of how they view transformation. So, what do you kind of discover the most about it?
That's a great question. I think ever since I started being a part of this back in season 1, one of the things I did learn, and I'll get to a more specific answer, but I do want to give one broad one, and that's, how different everyone's interpretation of transformation is. And like we've had these conversations before in terms of like, what counts as TF is putting on your clothes TF. Like what are the boundaries, all that kind of stuff. And those I find really interesting, but also just I think the ways in which each person views the concept fundamentally different from one another. Like, I don't think there's been a single person who has come on who would say, the same thing in terms of what they like and what they're looking for in terms of content, and B, how they view kind of the philosophy of the concept. And that's the thing that I really like digging into. Digging into that sort of philosophical side is really cool to me. If I wanted to be like even more specific in terms of things that I've learned, I think one of the interesting things I've learned so far throughout this podcast is just the fact that I think I've found that there are certain things that I have become more open to in TF, like specific concepts or specific ideas. And I always consider myself a pretty open-minded person when it comes to transformation content, even though I have like specific boundaries around certain types. But even then, somehow I think I've come out of this having expanded my horizons wider than I thought I would. And I think that's kind of cool. So, beyond, of course, being really thankful to get to have these conversations on like a weekly basis, I think the main thing is just that I think my vistas have expanded, and I'm grateful for that.
That's pretty great. This is when the audience like gives back in another way,
Mm-hmm.
I definitely have also learned a bunch of things, and it's kind of hard to narrow down which ones to point out. But what I have learned is that in doing this, there is so much to talk about. Listen,
No, I'm agreeing.
Because I remember speaking with Pessimist, and I remember early on it was just like, well, we're going to be talking about like what to do with the podcast, and she's like, I have no idea how you could really just talk about this stuff without just running out of content, and I was like, nah, there's a lot to just extrapolate that actually leads into its own conversations, and this has been proof that each time we listen to an episode, it's just like, oh yeah, that particular thing, which seems to be a world of its own. We can dig into that, and that could be really interesting. And it just proves to me that there is a ton to explore and appreciate beyond anything that I enjoy or am aware of. And to what you said, Zil, about expanding your horizons, like, it does that for me at a different rate, but I can definitely, I definitely start to now critically think differently about all the things I see and what they could mean. Because art is a language, of its own. Is like, what does it mean when this is that, and so on and so forth. And now I can think about that as well. There's just a lot to talk about, and I mean, I'd like to be able to touch on as much as possible while we're given the opportunity, and I hope that people really listen, because I want everybody else to open up too. I'm open to a lot of your shit. I'm open to so many people's shit. Anytime somebody is like, "Oh, I make art," I'm like, "Let me see. I want to see it." Come on, everybody. Fucking come on.
But yeah, I guess to also that point about the length thing, this is episode 45. I was just doing a quick count, 45. So yeah, we've had a lot to talk about. If we could fill up 45 episodes worth of like an hour and a half, even up to 2 hours worth of talking about TF, there's a lot that can be said about transformation, and I think we've got plenty more to still dig into. So.
One other thing that I've noticed, and I think this is important. This apparently has been good for some people.
Yes, that's a great point too.
This isn't actually turning out to contribute to what seems to be a community.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that there's been a lot of really wonderful messages that I know I've gotten, we've gotten. And
no, mostly you. I don't get those messages.
Okay, well, I think that the messages that at least I have seen when they talk about the impact that this stuff has, and again, hearing people articulate all this stuff verbally, it means a lot, and it helps to keep this going, because it really helps, in my opinion, to continue that creative drive. And if you also want to continue to help keep this podcast going, you can always join our Patreon at patreon.com/TFTuesdayPod.
Every little bit helps,
Yeah, very smooth segue. Yeah, I think that was pretty much everything for today. And thank you so much, Antifreeze, for coming on. If folks are looking for more of your stuff, where can they find you?
I'm mostly working on Twitter, unless that bombs, because you know how that's going. But you can find me in. I have my stories on Doc Lab under, I think, Antifreeze or Antibun. I have a lot of freaking handles, but I'm on Doc's Lab. I think it's Antifreeze there or Antibun. And for Affinity is Microphone Underground. So you can find me on there for my stories, and I have some commissioned artworks.
Yeah, nice. We'll have it and we'll have the links in the description too.
Yeah.
Thanks, man. Awesome. Thanks for coming on. You've been great. I gotta say that for a heel, you are very giving and generous. It's quite the paradox. I think you should think about that. I think you should think about like what it means to be a heel while being like, how can I serve you?
Well, like I said, being a heel is that you're in character is that you're a bad guy, but out of the scenes, you're probably one of the nicest guys. So I think that you see a lot of. It's one of the TV tropes as well, like mean character.
Yeah, but you're doing kayfabe, and you're doing like, and that's like part of it because you're still doing it, and it's still a paradox. So you just have to know the art to understand it.
Exactly. So it's good to be bad, though.
Don't worry. I've learned to take bumps, and I appreciate wrestling when I see it more now. I know what goes
Exactly.
into it. Don't worry. It means I can appreciate your work now more.
Thanks for having me as well, and guys been great.
You've been great, man.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening, and keep an open mind. And yeah, you do the other ones. I don't want to do those. Yeah.
Well, I think everyone should stay hydrated and get good rest and have a good week and also stay TFE. So
Yeah, see, it comes out of your mouth better.
all right, thanks everyone.
Yeah.
See y'all next week.